Welcome back to Starz Recapped, the channel where we unravel the darkest horror films and explain every chilling twist in minutes. Today, we're diving into The Conjuring, The Cult, a terrifying tale about a father, a lost daughter, and a sinister group hiding in the shadows. This story begins when a man named David returns home after work and discovers a nightmare waiting for him. His daughter Masha is found lifeless in the bathtub, but her presence never truly leaves the house. From that moment on, David is pulled into a web of hallucinations, eerie footsteps, strange visitors lurking outside his home, and a diary filled with secrets Masha never shared. As he digs deeper, he uncovers a disturbing truth. Masha was connected to a mysterious cult, and now her spirit is bound between worlds, calling out to him. But the real terror begins when David tries to bring her back, because the ritual he attempts doesn't just open a door, it invites something far darker into his home. So sit back, turn off the lights if you dare, and let's break down every chilling twist in The Conjuring, The Cult. This is Starz Recapped, and the horror starts now. The story opens in a quiet American town, where a man named David returns home after a long day at work. The moment he steps inside, he calls out for his daughter, Masha. But the house stays silent. Her car is still in the driveway, and David clearly remembers she mentioned having friends over that evening, so her absence doesn't make sense. Growing uneasy, he hurries upstairs to check her room, empty. That's when his attention shifts to the bathroom door, slightly open. David pushes it wide, and what he sees freezes him to the core. Masha is in the bathtub, motionless, with deep wounds on her arms. She had taken her own life. The shock is so overwhelming that everything inside David collapses in that instant. From that moment, his world becomes a constant torment. Every night, he jolts awake from terrifying nightmares soaked in sweat, and as the days pass, he begins noticing dark figures moving in the corners of his vision, shadows that shouldn't be there. One night, David was jolted awake by a chilling presence in his room. He felt as if Masha was standing right in front of him, but not the way he remembered her. Her face was twisted with an expression so horrifying that David couldn't even lift a finger. He just froze. Months passed. After struggling to piece himself back together, David finally joined a local support group where people shared the darkest moments of their lives. When his turn came, David stood up and spoke with a trembling voice. 4 months ago, my daughter took her life, and just last month, my wife walked away. Honestly, I don't know why I'm still here. As he spoke, 4 women dressed in all black, sitting together at the back of the room, fixed their eyes on him. Their stare was so intense it felt like they were looking straight inside his soul. David continued, saying that if he could just talk to Masha one last time, maybe he could breathe again. But the group leader shut him down immediately. Trying to contact spirits is dangerous. Those things invite darkness. Stay away from it. Feeling defeated, David pushed the idea aside. But after the meeting ended, those same 4 mysterious women approached him. "We can help you," one of them whispered. "We can help you see Masha again." David stepped back, confused. He was sure he hadn't mentioned his daughter's name to anyone there, yet they spoke it clearly. "We hear what's buried in people's hearts," one of them said, smiling faintly. "If you truly want to meet her, come to us." The following day, David's life took an even stranger turn. His hands suddenly went numb, as if all feeling had drained out of them. Before he could process it, he heard a woman's voice echoing through the house. When he went upstairs, he found his ex-wife, Michelle, gathering her belongings as if she couldn't leave fast enough. Later that night, something even more disturbing happened. David felt completely frozen, unable to move a muscle, like his entire body had shut down. Then a soft whisper drifted from the upper floor. Terrified yet drawn in, he slowly made his way toward Masha's old room. The moment he stepped inside, he felt a cold presence right behind him. He spun around. Nothing. The room was empty. Trying to steady himself, David started looking through Masha's things. That's when he discovered a diary. Inside it, he found a picture of Masha standing with the same 4 women he had seen at the support group. Except their faces looked distorted, smudged, almost erased. As he turned the pages, it became painfully clear. Masha had been struggling. Every entry was filled with confusion and unanswered questions. The next morning, David opened the diary again, this time reading every detail carefully. Suddenly, he realized he was holding something, a woman's undergarment. Horrified, he looked up, and there she was, Masha, standing silently on the staircase. David whispered her name, Masha, but she didn't react. Without looking at him, she walked upstairs and slipped into her room, closing the door behind her. David jolted awake. It had all been another nightmare. Sweat poured down his face, and his breath shook as he tried to calm himself. His eyes drifted to an old photograph of Masha on the shelf, and then a dark, shapeless figure appeared in the corner of the room. A shadow so heavy and menacing it felt like it was about to consume him whole. The next morning, David tracked down one of Masha's old friends, Casey. Hoping for answers, he gently asked, "Did Masha ever mention anything unusual, anything she was hiding?" Casey thought for a moment before shaking her head. No. No, she always acted like everything was fine. David then pulled out a photo. Then tell me, who are these 4 people standing with her? Casey looked at it, confused, and admitted she didn't recognize any of them. Later that night, David returned to the support group and opened up about all the strange events happening around him. The 4 women dressed in black, the same ones who had shown interest in him before, listened to every word with intense focus. When the meeting ended, they approached him again. "There is a presence in your home," one of them said. "We need to cleanse your house before it harms you." Desperate for answers, David agreed and began giving them directions. But they cut him off. "We don't need your address. We'll find it." True to their word, the moment David reached home, the 4 women appeared at his door almost instantly. They began their cleansing ritual, chanting in every corner of the house, their voices echoing through the rooms. In the middle of it, Michelle, David's ex-wife, walked in. Seeing unfamiliar women in her old home, she jumped to the worst conclusion. "So this is what you've become?" she snapped before storming out. David chased after her, trying to explain, but Michelle refused to listen and drove away in anger. When he returned, the women were waiting with cold expressions. "You interrupted the cleansing," one of them said. "Masha's spirit needed guidance to leave, and now she's trapped even more." For the first time, doubt crept into David's mind. Their behavior felt off. Pushing back, he told them to get out of his house. As they left, one of them whispered, "You must discover why Masha still lingers." That night, David spiraled. He tore pages out of Masha's diary, searching for anything that made sense. Suddenly, he felt something moving, a shadow drifting up the stairs. He jolted awake again, another nightmare. Or so he hoped. Unable to shake the horror, he went into Masha's room. There she was, his daughter, staring at him with fear in her eyes. He blinked and woke up again, gasping. Then he saw it, a dark shape near his feet, and faint sobbing echoing down the hall. He followed the cries and saw Masha's silhouette. "Masha, wait," he called out, reaching for her. But the moment he touched her, everything shattered. Another dream. David's mind was breaking. The line between reality and nightmare no longer existed. He was falling deeper into madness with every passing second. The next morning at work, David looks completely drained, like he hasn't slept in days. While staring blankly out the window, he freezes. 3 women are standing outside the building, the same women from the support group who had been watching him earlier. Right then, his phone rings. It's Casey, Masha's old friend. In a worried voice, she says, "David, I think Masha got involved with some strange organization. Those people in the photo you showed me, they might be from that group." Before David can respond, the call ends, and he notices the 3 women from outside now walking straight toward him inside the office. Their presence sends a chill down his spine. That night, an eerie stillness fills David's home. Suddenly, a woman he's never seen before appears in front of him. Her expression is blank, and her movements are unnervingly slow. She gestures toward a Ouija board and whispers, "If you want to speak with Masha, follow exactly what this board tells you." Desperate for answers, David agrees. The moment he begins the ritual, his surroundings twist and warp. Suddenly, he finds himself in a strange, dreamlike place, and the same 4 women sit before him in a circle. Their leader speaks calmly. "To call Masha's spirit, you must bring her diary, and the things she treasured most." David rushes to collect the diary and her belongings. As soon as he places them down, the ritual begins, but the atmosphere changes instantly. Fear flickers across the women's faces. Their bodies start trembling violently, and one by one they collapse to the ground, completely unconscious. David looks at the old photograph again, the one where their faces used to be blurred. Now, the faces are crystal clear. He realizes something horrifying. The 4 women in the photo and the 4 women sitting before him, they're the same. And somehow, they're also one single entity. David's heart pounds. He can't tell whether he's trapped in a vision, a spirit realm, or losing his grip on reality. Panicked, he snaps back into the real world and immediately calls Michelle. "Please, just stay here tonight. I can't be alone," David begs. Seeing how broken he looks, Michelle agrees. But the moment her eyes land on the Ouija board on the table, her expression changes. "What is this? Why are you messing with this nonsense?" David tries to laugh it off. "It's nothing. It's just a game." Michelle's temper snaps. "A game? This is too much, David." Angry and frightened for him, she storms out, leaving David alone once again. That night, David slipped into another nightmare, one far worse than the others. In this dream, he saw Masha leaning close to Michelle, whispering something directly into her ear. A moment later, Michelle let out a blood-curdling scream. David jolted awake, gasping for air, but the nightmare wasn't done with him. He could still hear Masha's voice, soft and echoing, calling him toward her old room. When he looked down, he noticed a thin red thread wrapped around his finger, as if someone had tied it there while he slept. Gripping the thread, he followed it into the bathroom, the same bathroom where Masha had ended her life. Inside the dream, the scene replayed again. Masha in the bathtub, drenched in blood. But this time, something changed. She slowly turned her head, stared directly at David, and whispered, "Daddy, I'm so lonely." David woke up again, trembling, the sound of her voice still ringing in his ears. When he looked out the window, he froze. 3 figures were standing outside in the darkness, the same strangers who had been haunting him for days. Shaken to the core, David made a reckless decision. He would summon Masha's spirit himself. He opened her diary and found a strange incantation scribbled on one of the pages. As he began chanting it, the room filled with eerie, distorted sounds. His head spun, the air turned icy, and then darkness. David collapsed. A freezing gust of wind swept over him and everything went silent. When he finally regained consciousness, he heard faint crying coming from down the hall. He followed the sound and opened a door. And there she was, Masha, curled up on the floor, shivering. Pale, fragile, like a ghost made real. David knelt beside her and gently touched her cheek. It was ice cold. "Dad, I'm freezing," Masha whispered. Overwhelmed and desperate to protect her, David scooped her into his arms. "You need a warm bath," he said, pulling off his shirt to wrap around her. She didn't look human anymore, more like a shadow wearing the shape of his daughter. Relieved yet terrified, David grabbed his phone and called Michelle. "I found her," he said breathlessly. "Masha is alive." But the voice on the other end wasn't Michelle. It repeated David's words back to him in a chilling, mocking tone, followed by a deep, distorted laugh that made his blood run cold. David, shaken to his core, instantly cut the call. When he turned back toward Masha, she was staring at him with a blank expression, repeating the same question in a chilling, repetitive tone. "Daddy, I'm a good girl, right?" Before David could answer, she tilted her head and asked another question, one that made his blood freeze. "Daddy, why did you take your own life?" David couldn't even process those words. Terrified, he grabbed her hand and tried to guide her toward the front door, desperate to get her out of whatever nightmare this was. But just as they reached the exit, 5 figures appeared out of nowhere, blocking their way. At that moment, Masha let out a piercing scream and tore her hand away from David, sprinting back inside the house. David yelled her name and ran after her, but she had vanished into the shadows. He turned a corner, and there she was, silently standing behind him, clutching a broken glass shard. Before he could react, she swung it at him, the jagged edge slicing into his head. David stumbled back, bleeding, trying to escape the room. He rushed toward the strangers standing at the doorway and begged for help, but they didn't move. They just stared at him, completely still. Instinctively, he snatched the hat off one of their heads, and what he saw beneath it made his knees weaken. These weren't human faces. They weren't human at all. Overwhelmed by terror, David fell to the ground, but somehow managed to scramble back into the house. He slammed the door shut behind him, but Masha's voice kept echoing through the rooms, drawing him deeper into the darkness. When he followed the voice, he found her again, this time holding a knife. Before he could step back, she lunged at him, slashing his stomach. David collapsed in agony, but managed to kick her away and force himself upstairs. Masha came after him like a shadow that couldn't be outrun. David locked himself in the bathroom, gasping, thinking he'd finally found a moment of safety. But when he slowly opened the door, Masha was already standing right outside, staring at him. In a panic, David fought back, trying anything he could to break free. But that's when Masha let out a chilling scream. "You destroyed my life." Those words hit David like a thunderbolt. Whatever he had done in the past, it was far worse than he ever admitted. Before he could react, Masha revealed the truth. The pain she carried wasn't an accident. She had taken her own life to escape the torment she endured because of him. And now, twisted by a dark force, she lunged at David with inhuman rage. A brutal struggle broke out. In the chaos, David's hand landed on the knife that had fallen to the floor. Guided by fear, he struck again and again until the final blow pierced straight through her chest. Masha collapsed, her scream echoing through the entire house. Shaking and barely able to stand, David tried to make his way out. But before he could reach the door, the 4 mysterious women appeared once again. They surrounded him, holding him in place as something unnatural began to move inside him. David gasped in horror as a hand pushed out through his own stomach. Moments later, Masha emerged, reborn from his body, alive again in a horrifying new form. David's final act became the price for her second life. And with that haunting rebirth, the story comes to a chilling end. And that brings us to the end of this chilling story. A twisted tale of dark rituals, rebirth, and relentless spirits. A movie that keeps you thinking long after the final scene fades. If you enjoyed this breakdown of the horror thriller, and you want more movie recaps, horror explanations, supernatural breakdowns, and mystery movie summaries, then stick with us. Before you go, don't forget to hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and share this video with your friends who love creepy films and mind-bending stories. And of course, make sure to subscribe to Starz Recapped for more daily movie recaps, horror movie explanations, and full story breakdowns just like this one. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next terrifying recap.